All right. Welcome back to Extra AI, your podcast series on AI and machine learning applications, where we demystify AI and help you build valuable business use cases. After a brief break of 2 weeks, where I had to attend a podcast on another platform, I come back here as a host, Raghu Banda, and with an extraordinary guest who's a powerhouse in the AI domain. So please welcome me in inviting Tobias Wingman, the managing partner of Rapid.ai. With over 15 years of experience, Tobias has been instrumental in accelerating business adoption of AI and machine learning in Germany. He is not only an AI maestro, but also an acclaimed author of AI powered business intelligence or AI powered BI. But wait, there's more. Tobias' insightful weekly newsletter, AI4BI.rocks, is a treasure trove for data professionals as well. And his dedication to education has enriched over 8,000 students in data science through webinars, online training, and mentorship. And one more thing, Tobias is also an influencer in the world of AI on LinkedIn with over 50,000 followers, and he generates a lot of interest in the articles that he shares as well. So I'm pleased to welcome Tobias in today's conversation where we focus on the power of AI. As always, you will find more details at the end of the podcast conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation. All right, welcome back to our podcast series, Extra AI. We are in the season 6, and today I have the honor of inviting a guest, Mr. Tobias Wingman, uh, on the topic of the power of AI, and we'll focus a bit more on AI in the context of BI. Tobias has authored a book. He's also a AI coach and a mentor. And there are a lot of things that I would like to also ask Tobias. Uh, so let us get started. So welcome on board, Tobias.
Thanks, Raghu. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
All right. So maybe I'll first try to get into this. Uh, the first question that I have in my mind is like, maybe this is how I kind of get started with my conversations when I get the guests on board, right? Like, rather than me speaking out about, I would like to hear more from the guest. Can you tell us a bit of a background about your connection with AI and how you got into this AI world?
Yeah, sure. So I would say I would describe myself as a data scientist with a being a business person at heart. So I originally have a background in business administration. I did my bachelor degree there quite a while ago. Then I did an IT management degree, a master in IT management a couple of years later. And that was eventually when I just kickstart my data science career. Essentially, R programming got me into this whole space. And yeah, it was really a journey, I would say, over the past decade, really. Was nothing that happened overnight. I have the impression that AI suddenly becomes popular or became popular overnight. But the real fun for me was to really go through those different stages of understanding how data can drive businesses. Not only machine learning, but really just plot, just plain data and data-driven insights, and
Right.
at the very core of that. And then trying to open the hood and look under the hood of machine learning and how that works. And when I figured out that it's actually not that complicated as it
Hmm.
at least seems to be, that got me really excited into diving deeper into areas like AI. And yeah, I'm really glad to have taken this journey because I think this is really where the future will be heading. Even though there's a lot of, controversial takes around that, and, how AI will shape us as a society. But I think really that AI holds a lot of opportunities for both, people and businesses out there. So I'm really excited to be in that space right now.
Amazing. I like the aspect that you brought about data, right? So data is this is where I think all these conversations go on, right? The data is the new oil, and with, with all this information that is available, and how you could leverage or use this information to make real meaning or real insights out of it. And I believe that is where your focus area is as well. Uh, so just like how I do on my conversations, I start with a teaser question with my guests. Uh, so I would like to put this question in a different way. Maybe could you provide a personal or a professional example, whichever may sound better, or whichever may you might want to share, with regard to your influence on AI or how AI influenced you. In the past, you might have noticed that things have been working in this way, but without even realizing, you know that there is a factor of AI or a factor of data-driven AI.
Yeah, I think like I like to think in a about AI in really practical terms, honestly. And when I would like to, share, a personal example of how AI has influenced me, I can only take one example, which has also, managed to be in my book, which I wrote last year.
Mm-hmm.
That is how to use AI in order to, turn unstructured data, and in this particular case, PDF documents into really structured data. And this is, a process which a lot of people don't really, like think about when they think about AI. A lot of people think about like predicting stuff and so on, which is like correct, and also like, using ChatGPT and so on. But I think, one real advancement of AI is also to be able to, take data that is normally not really available for analytics or further automation processes, like, for example, extracting information from like plain PDF data, plain PDF
Mm-hmm.
data files, which are ubiquitous in businesses, which are everywhere in businesses. And now we can actually use AI to extract information from that. And that's actually working pretty well out of the box without, training your own AI models. So like there are tons of different AI services out there that will help you to extract information from like PDF documents. And that might sound like a really trivial use case or a really trivial example, but at the same time, there are like a gazillion different opportunities in businesses where you can take like these kind of like, scanned files or scanned documents or PDF files and try to, unlock some insights in them and at least try to run some first descriptive statistics around them, and then, maybe dial into diagnostic statistics or diagnostic analytics and so on. So I think, this is really a huge possibility for AI to unlock those unstructured data sources, which I very often, like to start with, because I think it's something that, a lot of people understand, and it's also a challenge that a lot of businesses have, right? Because as you said, data is the new oil. I'm not so sure if I would, underline this, but it's definitely one of the most precious resources that, companies have. But at the same time, like data doesn't really, come by nature or natural in like clean tables, right? It's all around us. It's happening in
Mm-hmm.
unstructured text. It's happening in unstructured, as I mentioned, documents or images or whatever. And I think we need technology in order to bring that into a format that can help us to, get insights from this data. And that's why I also like, to start at this very core of, trying to unlock unstructured data sources with AI.
Beautiful. I think, yeah, I like the example that you have quoted, right? Like there is a lot of different information that comes in different ways. And when you say that unstructured documents or unstructured PDFs, that's a very humongous amount of information. And how you unlock the information out of that? I think that's a great example, and it very well resonates with me because we have been working on some similar use cases at my workplace. But yeah, before we get into our real conversation, maybe could you also share some thoughts or interesting thoughts about I know we hear a lot of AI is no longer a hype or it's more like become a buzzword now for the last few quarters, I would say, with the inception of these new large language models. Of course, we know about how all this evolution is happening, but any thoughts about these upcoming AI advancements in the current world that you would want to provide before we get into our introduction?
Yeah, I think this is right now. It's really an exciting space. There's this saying that we as people we try to like overestimate or over exaggerate, the technological advancement that will happen in the next 12 months, but we tend to underestimate, the advancements in the next 5 years. And I think this also applies to AI and especially the whole LLM space.
Mhm.
If you ask me, I think the hype is real. Like I personally am using tools like ChatGPT, but also other LLMs on a daily basis. I see people using this who have no technical background at all, using ChatGPT in order to produce text, to plan their day, to just get a second opinion on something. It's really, in a way, revolutionary because it has, this high, extremely high user adoption. On the same side, I think, when it comes to using these techniques in a business setting or in many enterprise settings, I feel there's still a long way to go until we get to a point where, this becomes natural to use for businesses. And I don't know how long this will take, honestly. And it's very hard, I guess, right now to make a, to make a prediction about the speed of the development in this space. So that will be really exciting to watch this whole area. But I think we have really kind of like opened the box right now, and everyone's trying to figure out how to use that. And I would say rightly so. Like I can only encourage every business to figure out if there's any potential for them in this technology or not. I'm not saying that everyone should jump on this hype train, but I think every business right now should be at least ask themselves the question like, is there something that AI is impacting my business, or is there something that I can use that for? And like if there's no opportunity right now, fine, but I think you should at least ask yourself that question and really spend some time in order to to think about that, and then make a just make a conclusion based on that.
Yeah, right. I think you rightfully mentioned about, I know this is also one of the other areas, right? Like apart from AI coaching and AI mentoring, you also uh, guide businesses how they can transform using AI. I think that is also one of your niche area. I believe maybe we'll also touch base that in our conversation later today.
Yeah, sure.
All right, welcome back. So let us now get into the meat of our today's conversation, the power of AI, which is what I want to focus on, right? Like, I know we briefly touch based about this, Tobias, before our break, and I know this is also one of your niche area about advising or guiding some of the enterprises and the enterprise businesses about transforming their businesses with AI. So, how do you maybe could you say a few words about how do you see AI transforming enterprises and the consumer businesses?
Yeah, sure. So I think right now AI is transforming or at least challenging a lot of businesses more than ever. And this is mostly due to the huge adoption of AI services like ChatGPT. So to give you an example, like 1 year ago, more or less, we had the situation that obviously companies were playing around with AI. They launched some AI projects or prototypes, did some ML research and so on. But all these projects were more or less controlled by a more or less small department, often like a data lab or an AI lab inside an organization or a data team. And they had control of it, right? They had control over developing the models and putting the models into production and doing these
Mhm.
things. And then ChatGPT happened overnight, and suddenly everyone went crazy about that. And they asked questions about ChatGPT, pasted their email into that, and suddenly overnight, the average enterprise had like a 60 or 70% adoption rate of AI users in their company. And this was really, really new for a lot of companies. And honestly, up to today, many businesses haven't really found an answer on that. Like businesses are asking themselves, like, should they prohibit these services? Should they just like, try to lock users out? Should they try to build their own LLM inside? And they are just like trying to figure it out. But right now we're in a situation where you don't have a central data team or AI team that can control, these AI technologies, but it's out there. also out there for business users to use and to benefit from. And I think this really puts us in a position where up to the executive floor, CEOs are asking themselves, what is our AI strategy right now?
Hmm.
Like I've seen CEOs asking about the data strategy like 2 or 3 years ago, but right now they are asking about the AI strategy. Some are even asking in particular about the LLM strategy. And what they mean often is, how can we deal with all those people asking me, the CEO, like how can I use like things like ChatGPT, and how should I teach my employees using that, or should I prohibit that, for forbid them using those tools and stuff like that. So I think this is a really exciting conversation which is currently going on, and businesses need to find an answer on that, and they need to find the answer fast.
Right. So this is no longer going to be a technological question, but it's more of a business question. That's what has become, right? I
Yeah.
think that's what you mean to say. Do you mind to elaborate a bit more on that? Because I know the hype, like you mentioned, it's no longer a hype. Rather than just asking the data strategy, now the questions are not only going to be asked as AI strategy, but also it's going to be LLM strategy.
Hmm.
And I know that LLM, the term LLM, the large language models, uh, I wouldn't want to quote it this way, but I think uh, rather than even understanding the business problem and understanding how I can address the business problem, the question has become like with the wave of this chat GPT and Bard, the LLM strategy has took over the centerpiece a bit more. So I know this is one of the newer AI innovations. How does it make it more interesting, or how does it make interesting for you, and what are your perspectives on that?
Yeah, sometimes, in technology, there are those kind of magical moments,
Right.
when even non-technical users, experience that kind of magical moment. And so far, there's one big company out there from California who really knows how to create these magical moments. And you probably know what company I'm talking about. But right now, I think we have seen that magical moment also from a complete underdog company, creating this. The last time I remember, having users that kind of like an aha effect interacting with a website was probably Google search back then, when it really worked well, right? And people for the
Right.
first time were using Google search. But now they have this like aha moment from this technology. But there's a big caveat. And the big caveat is that what they get there as in return, which sounds really, really confident and really accurate, in many cases is not, that accurate at all. So
Right.
there's this big gap between what this technology appears to be doing or appears to be capable of, between of what it is actually capable of and how you should use that. I think there are a ton of use cases and great use cases of how to use LLM, but I also think there's at least the same amount of use cases where you should not use LLMs for. And this kind of gap, I think, is an educational topic, and that's also what companies mean when they talk about their LLM strategy and AI strategy. It's how to bring the big user base on board. It's not about how to implement that in technology and how to get the data and tech people on board and how to align on the technology stack. It's not about that. It's how
Hmm.
about like to enable the 80% of the company in order to benefit from those tools. And for many businesses, the first priority is to like keep harm away from the company, so people are not misusing that or not using it in the wrong way or not exposing company secrets, like all these things. And that's why the first impulse most companies had was just to forbid these technologies and say, okay, you're not allowed to use that. But I think honestly that won't be a good strategy for the long haul, because as soon as you have businesses figuring out how to use LLMs effectively, I think that will be a really big competitive advantage for any business. So that's why I think companies are trying to figure that out, and especially how to bring the big user base on board and how to educate them on using these tools.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think great. I think this is mainly how, end of the day, how do I make my users or my businesses perform better if I had these kind of additional strategy, not only the AI strategy, but also using the LM strategy and focusing more on the business problem rather than the technology. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
can give you a pretty practical
Mhm.
example. I mean, take sales, for example, right? Every salesperson that is writing currently emails by hand to a customer, is actually kind of like or has a really big disadvantage to every salesperson who is doing the same job but using an LLM. Because it's very easy for AI-powered salespeople to personalize the email, to get to get a quick context of what happened in the previous conversations, to really tailor that, to make sure that the message has a certain follows a certain framework in order to achieve a certain goal, like booking a demo or whatever that is. And this is just one particular example, and I think there are hundreds of these examples in the average businesses, from strategy planning to internal consulting to writing marketing materials to everything that kind of involves some kind of knowledge work. And that's why it's so hard to really control this technology, because it's not something that happens in one particular department of the company. It happens everywhere. It's a very horizontal technology, and that's why it's so hard to kind of govern or control this. But at the same time, I think it's a big leverage, because once you have this horizontal technology like electricity, you just switch it
Right.
on and it's there, for the better or for the worse. And I think this will be really really critical to figure this out. But I see definitely a ton of use cases, in businesses right now for this, and a lot of businesses are actually adopting that also, with a good number of successes there.
True, true. And I greatly echo what you're saying, and how it can add additional benefits to the creative world, or the creative technologies that we folks are also focused on, right? Like now I have this, I want to take this tangential question, like from an author to an author. I have authored a book during the COVID time, and you have authored a book which has become very viral. Uh, and this was all before ChatGPT days. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is that I know nowadays people are putting together. I'm not taking out any uh, efforts out of that from people who are leveraging ChatGPT or AI assisted tools, which is fair enough, right? Like you could use these tools and put together. But like from an author to another, I have this question. You have put together this great book before the chat GPT, before the times. Would you want to briefly talk about that and your experience in putting together your thoughts about how you came up with the idea of putting together this book, the AI powered BI?
Yeah, I mean, maybe before I talk about that book, honestly, if I had ChatGPT back then, it would have been so much easier. I tell
Right,
you that.
right.
And just to quickly, dial into that, it's not about having ChatGPT, write the book for you. I think, that's, what a lot of people
Yes,
associate with,
yes.
but that's not the point. I give you some, really brief examples. I'm based in Germany. I'm a non-native English speaker, but, I still write a book in English. So
Right.
like having a tool like ChatGPT just helped me, figuring out grammar and helping me, put bullet points into a good text that sounds like, style that I want to have. That's a big advantage. Or another thing that I use ChatGPT a lot of, for is to give it a text that I wrote, and I just ask it for a contrarian opinion on that, or to just give me some criticism about that, to maybe see some blind spots that I would not see otherwise, which is especially when it comes to book writing, normally a task that tech editors are doing, or technical reviewers are doing. And now what I have is I have a technical reviewer by my side all the time that I can just ask, okay, please take this article or take this chapter apart, right, and give me some criticism about that. And I think there are really great ways to interact with tech technology. And it's not about having this technology write the book for you. It's about helping you and assisting you to write this book. And I think if I had this tech, it would be much easier to to rewrite the book right now. But yeah, dialing into this, or talking about the book in particular, it's called AI Powered Business Intelligence. Was published by O'Reilly last year, and it's all about how you can use AI to improve analytics and to
Mhm.
prove business intelligence, and try to make better reports and better forecasts, and also unlocking unstructured data. And when I wrote this book, there was we had GPT-3, but these things were all very far from being very accessible to the average users. And back then people were really constrained to areas where software vendors, for example, Microsoft Power BI, that's software that I covered in my book and extensively. have built-in AI features in order to interact with data. For example, there's something like the Q&A feature where you can just like ask your data set a certain question, like how was my sales last month, and then we'll get just the answer from the data set directly. But now with LLMs, this capability is of course supercharged to a new level, and it's also not only restricted to the BI tools. And I think this is can be a big opportunity, but it also opens up a whole new different set of problems, like how do you make sure that these results are really correct? How do you make sure that there's no data leakage outside your organizations and things like that? So I think like my book is not even a year old, but there has already been a completely new, like complex or topic complex opened up, that is probably very worth exploring in this regard. So yeah, the good thing for me is that the whole topic on AI for BI is definitely expanding in the future. So there will be definitely a lot of more things to talk about. But yeah, so that's that's how AI can impact analytics and the BI space.
Right. So greatly, I agree that that is a particular niche area, right? Like AI powered business intelligence, or how do you improve analytics and make it better for the business users? So diving a bit into that, I want to get into this business problem, right? Like the reason why you put this book, or the reason why you have started your journey into this, is that addressing some of these typical challenges that are faced by the customers. And why do you, before even getting there, uh, I would want to take a step back and understand, why do you think that this is a typical problem that is faced by the customers, and why do you think that it has to be addressed? Maybe you can take the context of
Mhm.
the the how you're dealt with AI powered analytics or AI powered business intelligence for your and customers.
Yeah, sure. So maybe I need to go back in history for that a little bit. So a couple of years back, I was working as a data scientist in a medium-sized corporation here in Germany, and I was part of a data and analytics team. And in this data analytics team, our goal was to build predictive models and do things like customer churn prediction, next best offer modeling, and so on. In the same company, but in a completely different business unit, there was a BI team. And the goal of the BI team was to provide insights to the company. And the problem back then was that the BI team and our data analytics team, like we completely spoke different languages, because
Right.
the BI team also historically, had a very strong financial background and had to do a lot of had to do a lot of things with financial planning and controlling and so on. And we came more from the marketing side of things, and we came with our predictive models and data science approach, and doing stuff in R and Python and so on. So we had this gap between the AI and BI team, or data and BI team.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the CEO of the company said, okay, like, but what's our overall data strategy? Like, how do we get the average user on board? Because the BI system back then also had a big disadvantage, because it's like, there wasn't a big user adoption in the, like, in the wide enterprise. Like business leaders were using it because they were checking their sales numbers, but, it was not like the average, employee would log in the morning and just check the BI tool. And why wouldn't they do that? Because there was a lot of friction involved. And one of that friction was that when you open these BI tools, you will see a mirror of what company data looks like right now. And this is company data is really complex, has a lot of dimensions. There's nothing like, a single source of truth. There are different, like I can tell you 5 different customer
Mm-hmm.
counts, and all of them are correct, just depending on how I define what a customer is, and these things. And we figured out that there needs to be an aligned effort between the data and the BI team in order to tackle these challenges, in order to make data more accessible to the business. Because if the core data teams are not able to collaborate on their
Mm-hmm.
core topic, which is data, I think the whole business will never get to a point where they all adopt a certain data-driven or data analytics mindset. So I think we need to have this alignment. And this is where, where I was triggered to write this book and try to align the data science and BI team. And I think, especially in BI departments, there are a lot of smart people who have worked with data for like decades in many cases, and they have a good understanding of the pitfalls of the average company data, of what you could do with it, about what business users want to have. And now if you enable them a little bit with, technology that can help them, for example, to, put user interfaces on top of the data that is helping users to query data in natural language, for example, or that enables users to, or business intelligence professionals or BI engineers to build predictive models or forecasts based on data which, they know is good and which they know are good signals for, future outcomes. I think then you have a much higher leverage of bringing these insights and bringing data in general to the business. Because it doesn't make sense, right, to tackle the problem from different angles. You need to have that joint effort. Otherwise, it's not possible to get the majority of people on board. And I think, in the end, that's the end goal. Like, if you want to be a data-driven business, you need to get the 80% of the users in the company, and you can't only focus on the 20% of the data champions that you have and, some of the Excel heroes that you have in your organization. You need to win the masses for you. And that's where I say, okay, let's start by aligning the core data teams, which is like data science / analytics and the BI team, and just try to, make them talk the same language and adopt the same tools and try to have an alignment here and bring them closer together. And this is what this whole book is all about. So yeah, that's that's why I wrote this book, and also the need that I saw from my own experience in that.
And I completely echo with you, because this is where many of the challenges that are faced by these enterprise businesses or the consumer businesses, right? Like you have your data science team sitting, they're talking a different language, and then you have your analytics and the business team sitting on the other side. They speak in a completely different language. And how do you marry this information together, and how do you showcase? So this is where maybe when you have elaborated a bit on that, how do you take the impact of these different predictive analytics or these machine learning or these data science tools that you have, and how do you take that and provide that, and how do you make that impact better for the business user, right? I think that is where you focused on bringing the impact of these different data science tools, or these different data science techniques, so that the business users or the end users can benefit more. Any particular example or anything that you would like to quote? We don't need to go into the specifics of the customer or the specifics of but holistically, do you want to speak about any example that can highlight the audience a bit more on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think bottom line is you need to make it easier for business users. So people per default are lazy. And I'm not meaning that in a negative sense, right? That's human nature. And we have to kind of accept that. So for example, I give an example with customer churn prediction. There are two ways you can, tackle this customer churn prediction use case. The first one would be to build a predictive model, to score all the, maybe just expanding on customer churn prediction. So you want to predict what customers are like leaving the business next month, or, not renewing their contracts next month, next year, whatever the business cycle is here. The first way to do that is, you model your customer base, you make a prediction for every customer, you take the prediction and you put that into the BI dashboard, and then the information sits there and lives happily ever after, but no one cares about that information because they are not looking into the BI dashboard. The other way would be to take this information and directly bring it to the people, bring it to the place in the business where people actually care about the information. And that might be, in Salesforce, in the CRM system that the business is using, so they can salespersons can, for example, filter customers that have a very high churn likelihood, and you maybe call them first instead of, taking this easy call, calling, a customer where they know they will come back again. It's just more of a, courtesy call to call them. Something like that. That could be an example. Another example could be, you could either show your business users a complex dashboard with 24 metrics and 124 dimensions, and giving them a seminar on how to drill down and how to slice and dice the data and build their own reports. Or the other option could be to reformulate or redesign your data model in a way that these data models can be accessed by natural language processing technology. That starts with schema descriptions, that starts with breaking up your star schema a little bit and maybe going back more to flat tables, trying to have small data marts inside your BI model. And then inserting a layer of natural language processing where business users can really easily question and interact with your data just by using natural language. And that does not even have to involve large language models. Like we had this before LLMs hit the scene. And a lot of BI tools have that built in, but it's often not used. And why it's not used? Because the data models are not ready for that.
Right.
And I think we need to take the data models. We need to accept that users like this natural language interface to interact with data, and we need to bring the data models to a place where it's easier for these NLP interfaces to query the data and to make robust and reliable queries. And these will be two examples. And the bottom line here is try to make it easier for the business users to interact with data and to get the insights they want. And because I think in the end, business users want to have insights and they want to have numbers and data, but in so many cases it's just so hard to get to that place. And in many businesses, once you find a number or once you find a certain KPI, and you go to an analyst and you ask them, okay, can I trust this number? And they say, I don't know. So you must not go into that, into that space. So it's really important to make it as easy and seamless for the users as possible.
Great. I like the way you have put it, or the way you have explained with these two examples, Tobias, because that is a differentiating factor where how you can make the end user feel more comfortable with the tools that they have at hand and how you are providing it to them so that it can add additional value to them. So that's great. Maybe I think we'll take a quick break and then come back and go into our final segment of our conversation so that we can discuss a bit more on the different technologies that you're using, whether it is the large language models or the different technologies that we use here. All right, welcome back. I think we are having some amazing conversation with Mr. Tobias. I would want to now dive a bit more deeper into the aspect of, I know now we did talk about the business problem. We did talk about how this business problem can be addressed by making these data assisted tools or these data available to the end user. I would want to go a bit more on that aspect of us about how do you measure the effectiveness or evaluate the effectiveness of these different techniques that we are doing, whether these are different tools or the different solutions that we are providing to the end user or the businesses.
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a tough one. That's a tough nut to crack because you have to just acknowledge that there isn't really a single business metric that you can tie to, some predictive model, at least not in the average business where you say, okay, if I improve the accuracy, my revenue will go up to a certain percent. We see those phenomena in tech industries or tech businesses, like, if your e-commerce store, that makes hundreds of millions and, improve the recommendation there and then revenue goes up. But even in those cases, it's often very hard to track that. And when we look in scenarios where you have a human in the loop, it gets even more complex and even more difficult. So I get to give you an example with that churn prediction, right? If you create a churn prediction, like nothing will happen, just based on that prediction. Some human needs to act based on that information, because this is driving the business. So how can you measure that? And I think the very first primitive measure you should do is trying to track the usage of your data or analytics tools. So you should have a metric of how often are people using the BI tool, for example. What are your most popular dashboards used in the organization? If you have analytics or if you have data that you want to use in for your sales organization, you should have very primitive metrics such as like how many how many interactions did you have, like did this go up or did this go down? Or if you have a very important like data field in your CRM system, which you like, for example, the customer churn prediction, field, you would need to figure out like how many in how many cases is that field filled, for example. Some very simple basics just to figure out if things are working correctly and working as expected. Because once you have the human in there, it gets very hard to like control that and very hard to measure that. But you should have at least the essentials right. And this is before a human can act on your data, they always have to see it in the first place. And I think this is where you can measure it, right? You can measure like how people are interacting with a certain piece of internal software, for example, or a dashboard or a report. And I've seen, something which is not directly a KPI, but I think it, dials pretty much into this discussion, which is there was a PDF report which was shared across the organization. And at the very beginning, there was just like, 3 or 4 people in the in this email in the email field who got this report. And this email list grew up to, I think, 40 people in the end. And this, indicated to us that, okay, there seems to be some excitement about this data. So maybe we should take this more seriously. But, things like that are a good proxy of, how people are actually caring about some information. And that's, one step I would start with. And beyond than that, and trying to do more advanced models of, measuring the business impact, that really depends on the actual use case and what you're trying to achieve and what lever you're trying to pull in the end. So yeah, that's how I see it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think this takes us to the right segue of my interesting question that I put in my podcast conversations with my guests, or I sometimes call it as a $1,000,000 question, right? Like depends on how we take it. So this gets us into a nice segue into the interesting question that I put during my podcast conversations, or I call it as the $1,000,000 question. It's great that you brought up the usage aspect of how do you make which of these characteristics better and how the end users are using it. I also know that I also know that you're very great and very active in this LinkedIn community, and your followers grew from 2,000 to 50,000 in the last 1 year. How did you differentiate yourself from the competition, or how did you make your community? In any few, I went into the blog where you're discussing about the 4 main key factors. So how do you differentiate, or how do you make your community leverage the benefits that you have provided? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think like two things really. So the first thing, I always try to share what I learned myself, things that I do, and also things that I do in business. So whenever it's possible, I try to share things with other people publicly in order to help them out, and honestly also to give something back, because I think there's no other tech community on the world compared to the data community where knowledge and technological advancement are just shared so freely. So yeah, I think that's one thing I really like about the whole data ecosystem, data community, and I really hope that it will stay like this for a long time. So I'm trying to contribute whatever I can here. And the other thing is, I always try to not intimidate people by these terms and by this technology. I try to explain things in a as easy as possible understand language, and as a also a language which a non-technical person should be able to understand. So that's something that I always try to try to achieve. And also I always try to just be really supportive and encouraging, because I have heard so many times that people say, oh, I'm not a data person, or I can't do statistics, like that's all too complicated. And I'm like, no, like everyone can calculate a mean and everyone can ask a critical question. Like there's nothing, like you are not born as a data person. Like and I think when it comes to statistics in particular, a lot of people think about very complex hypotheses, tests, and p-values they heard some like decades ago in their in their university, and they never want to deal with that again. which is fine. But then again, like, statistics is also like being able to look at a histogram, for example, and just being able to understand if, there's a certain maximum in the distribution and where's that maximum, or some even more trivial things. And I think just helping people, along that journey and encouraging people to, become a little bit more of a, data person without like turning into a data scientist or so, that's completely fine. But just trying to help people, get into the space. And the same applies to AI. I have the feeling, and this is the opening page in my book, that when you speak with people about AI, and a lot of people have that Hollywood impression of AI, of, robots trying to, conquer humanity and so on. And I think this is really not the case, right?
Right.
And right now you just have to accept AI as a technology which can really help you in order to, just be more productive and, do better things. Similar to like writing an email, right? Or using a spreadsheet software or using Google search. And you need to know how to use those things. But before you can learn those things, it all starts in your head. You need to be mentally ready by yourself and say, yes, I can do it. Like if trillion people or 100 million people out there can use ChatGPT, I can do it as well, right? So it starts with yourself. And I really like to, give people the mindset of, hey, you can do this, right? This is not rocket science. You can turn it into rocket science if you want to, but there's no need to start with rocket science from the beginning.
Great. I think amazing conversation with you, Tobias. Really thank you for joining the podcast today and sharing your wisdom around the power of AI and AI powered BI. Uh, can you share any key takeaways for our audience? Any remarks or any additional references that you would like to provide? Obviously, a wealth of the information that you have. Any references?
Yeah, of course. Like as always, like feel free to, follow me on social media, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm, very active there. Also feel free to read my book or subscribe to my newsletters. I'm, yeah, really sharing a lot of content. And otherwise, I would just say, like, bottom line, when you hear AI, just try to stay open-minded. Just see what's in there for you. And if there's nothing in there for you right now, that's also okay, but just start with an open mindset with that. And also, believe in yourself. You can do this.
Thank you. Amazing conversation with you, Tobias. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Rago. It's really my pleasure being here on this podcast. I really enjoyed the show. Thank you so much.
All right, so that brings us to the end of episode 53 of Extra AI. So let us now wrap up this podcast by first thanking our extraordinary guest, Tobias Wingman, for taking the time and providing us some valuable insights and his experiences in AI and data science, which have enlightened us all and reaffirmed how these technologies are realistically pushing the boundaries. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in as well. Your curiosity and thirst for knowledge always drives this podcast. And remember to check out Tobias's book, AI Powered BI, and his insightful newsletter, AI4BI.rocks. And here's to building some valuable business use cases with AI. As always, you can reach out to me via my LinkedIn post or LinkedIn handle, Raghu Banda, or my Twitter handle, RK Banda. You could also directly reach out to my guest, Tobias Wingman, since I'll be tagging him on the LinkedIn post here. You could also go into my website, extraai.com, xtrawai.com, and find a huge treasure of information and huge treasure of podcasts that I have done across various different domains. As always, provide your feedback, which is what keeps me going, keeps us going. Until the next episode, keep innovating, keep learning, and stay curious. This is Raghu Banda signing off from Extra AI. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies, and have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening wherever you're tuned in from. Bye bye now.